Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So guys, Eddie Hearn, Mr. Eddie Hearn, the big promoter in world boxing. Eddie Hearn, Big Eddie. Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn said that Jermall Lions Only Charlo should be fighting Caleb Plant or David Benavidez, and these fights, these rubbish fights that we're getting between you know, these fighters fighting, you know, C-level fighters, shouldn't be happening. They're saying that these are disgraceful fights, and these don't revive the sport. These damage the sport. You know, why are we getting these nothing fights? Eddie Hearn says, why are we getting these guys fighting each other who nobody cares about? Nobody cares about, you know, nobody cares about David Benavidez fighting Lemieux. Nobody cares about Jermall Charlo fighting Selecki. Nobody cares about nobody cares about flipping, what's his name? Well, I've lost it. Andrade and Parker. Nobody cares about all of that. People want to see Andrade v Benavidez. People want to see Benavidez v Charlo. He's saying, why ain't Charlo fighting Plant, and why ain't Charlo fighting Benavidez or Plant? They're all with PBC. Why are they not fighting each other? Terrible. It's right. Eddie Hearn hits the nail on the head. Why are they not fighting each other? Why? They all should be fighting each other, right? Why are they not fighting each other? Why are they having nothing fights? I personally think it probably comes down to that, you know, PBC see them as all stars, and they think by fighting each other they're gonna potentially wipe out a star. I don't know. Like, I don't even think they're stars though. I don't even think they generate big money. So I think the way they generate big money from them is by fighting each other. It does baffle me. Like, it does baffle me the way some of, you know, these guys have been handled. Like, I just think the whole boxing world has kind of just been damaged in terms of the way the boxing is run, the way it's managed. Like, back in the day, the best used to fight the best. Like, sometimes when we look back at history is different, because maybe back then there was people avoiding, dodging as well. But the problem is that all the big fights happen, whereas now we can name so many fights. And by the way, these are no iconic fights like Charlo v Plant. If that was to happen, that's not like a big iconic fight by any stretch of the imagination. Not like people would be like, oh, Charlo's fighting Plant, oh my god, like the world would stop. No, it's just a normal standard fight, really. You know, it's not like a big fight, is it? Charlo v Plant's not a big fight. This is a decent, good world level fight. You know, it's not a huge mega fight by any stretch. But that's just where boxing has gone. Boxing has for me been damaged. I feel like, you know, the best aren't fighting the best, and people look at Floyd Mayweather, but Floyd fought everybody. You know, Floyd might have picked and choose fights here and there when it best suited him, but Floyd fought everyone, man. And unfortunately, these guys don't have the talent. I also think the fact that all of these guys want to stay undefeated, and Floyd had a bad impact on them in that way as well, because, you know, all of these guys want to stay undefeated, but Floyd fought all the best guys, but Floyd was so gifted and talented that he was able to stay undefeated. These guys aren't that good, so they don't want to take a loss. They want that Mayweather record, but they don't want to fight the guys that Mayweather fought. You know, Mayweather fought unbelievable competition. Like, if you look at some of the names that he fought, even early on in his career, were like some serious wins he had on his record. But these guys don't want to put in that kind of work. They want to put in baby work and then be rewarded for it as well. They want big money, but they want easy fights. They want to keep their record. I just think the sport is being damaged, and I think until somebody comes in and gives this a shake-up, and I just don't think, like, even Eddie Hearn, I know Eddie Hearn saying that Charlo should be fighting Caleb Plant. But, you know, Eddie Hearn was trying to make Andrade and Golovkin, and he couldn't make it. They're on the same platform, and I believe he promotes both of those guys. He couldn't make it. So he's got to also look at himself. You know, Andrade v Munguia. You know, that fight could have been made. It didn't get made. So sometimes when these guys are like Eddie Hearn's also, there's many fights like Ben v Avanesian. You know, people want to see that fight, but, you know, Eddie Hearn's not making that fight because he's trying to build a star. So Eddie Hearn, although he's trying to take shots and take pops at other promoters, he's also got to look at himself. There's many times where Eddie Hearn is avoiding fights for his fighters, because he feels that they've got a lot more to lose than to gain. So Eddie Hearn does exactly the same thing. You know, like I said, Ben v Avanesian is a perfect example where people want to see that fight, but Eddie Hearn's building up Ben, and he's probably thinking, what do I gain from fighting Avanesian? They'd rather fight a washed up Khan or a washed up Brook, because they know that's a big payday, a big fight, and an easy win. That's what they're doing. In my opinion, that's what they're doing. But that isn't right, because basically, for me, you're kind of like cherry picking the easier fight. You're cherry picking. That's what initially is happening here, which is no good. Which is no good for the sport of boxing, in my opinion. And that's just the way I feel. I feel like a lot of these guys, they all talk a big game. Oh yeah, they're not fighting in. They look there with, you know. But Eddie Hearn's doing exactly the same thing. Look, he had, like I said, he never made Andrade v Golovkin. You know, and he may say, well, Golovkin don't want to fight Andrade. Well, it's tough. You know, maybe Charlo doesn't want to fight Plant. You know, a promoter can't force for somebody to get in the ring. So when they say, oh, Charlo should be fighting Benavidez and Benavidez should be fighting Plant, well, yeah, it's easier said than done, because Eddie Hearn's not making fights. Eddie Hearn could make an Avanesian Ben fight like that if he wanted to. And that's what a lot of fans want to see. But instead, Eddie Hearn is trying to draw fights with Ben and Van Herden. Avanesian would fight Ben in a heartbeat. But and that's a fight, like I say, the fans want. But Eddie Hearn's rather get him a bigger fight with a bigger name. Not a bigger fight in terms of competitiveness, a competitive fight. He'd rather get him a fight with someone like Khan, who's washed up. And it's a big fight because of the names. But that's nonsense. That's not, that for me as a promoter, you're building a guy up, and listen, he's building him up, and I understand that. But also, you can't then accuse other promoters of not making the fights, because you also are not making the fights. They've made big fights. They made Canelo Plant. You know, they've made some big fights amongst their stable. They have. Al Haymon. You know, he made Sean Porter v Errol Spence. That was a big fight, wasn't it? They were both with Al Haymon. He made Danny Garcia v Keith Dem and Sean Porter v Danny Garcia. These are all fights that Al Haymon put on. So the point I'm trying to make, he's made big fights as well. What big fights has Eddie Hearn put on to that level amongst his own stable? You know, and that's what you got to look at. It's easy criticizing others, but sometimes when you look into your own stable, Eddie Hearn's kind of the same, really. Like, his fighters don't always fight. His stable don't always fight each other. You know, like I said to you, he could make the benefit, even though Avanesian isn't in his stable. He was at one point. But for example, Avanesian they could make that fight like that. And that's a fight, like I say, the fans want. But Eddie's not going to make it because he knows it's too much risk. And this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't just feel like it's one party. I think everyone, this is why I'm saying this is a cultural thing. I don't just think it's Al Haymon. I think it's everybody out there doing it. You know, Canelo was, okay, if you can say Canelo's with Eddie Hearn, but he couldn't convince him to fight Andrade. Yet they were both under DAZN, but he couldn't convince him. So what the point I'm trying to make is, do you see where I'm getting with this? Where I'm getting at is that at the end of the day, that, you know, Eddie Hearn hasn't made some fights that with guys on the same platform. He isn't able to convince them, and that's what it comes down to. If the fighter doesn't want to fight that guy, you know, at the end of the day, it's hard to convince somebody to get in the ring with somebody if they don't want to. And this is where I'm coming from, that I feel like everyone's quick to, you know, point out, why isn't Charlo fighting Plant? Why isn't Benavidez fighting Plant? But why isn't, you know, Golovkin fighting Andrade? Why isn't Andrade, you know, fighting Munguia? Like, you know, these are things that we have to answer. And like I said, these are, like, I know Munguia's with Golden Boy, but at the end of the day, it's still on the same platform. The fight should be easy to make. And like I said, Golovkin is with Eddie Hearn, if I'm not mistaken. You know? So I think there's many big fights that when it makes sense, Eddie will make it. But if it doesn't make sense, even though the fans might want it, he won't make it, because it comes down to whether it suits Eddie Hearn. And like I said, the Avanesian was with Eddie Hearn, but he still couldn't make the fight. And even the fact that Avanesian is now with Frank Warren, it's irrelevant, because I'm pretty certain that Frank Warren would allow him to go and fight on DAZN. He even said he's willing to pay his purse. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So like, it comes down to the fact that every promoter is the same, you know, and that's what it comes down to. But yeah, leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I think it's a frustrating time for boxing. I think it's a frustrating situation because we as fans don't seem to get the fights that we want, and we get irritated, we get frustrated, we like, oh, this is terrible, you know, we're not getting the fights. It is bad, it's nonsense, you know, but it is what it is, you know. Unfortunately, that's just boxing. Boxing is like that. Boxing it's just rubbish like that at times. But leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button, share this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.